Hey, brother. Guys, do you hear that? That's the song of our people. One song to unite them all, and in the darkness bind them. It has been over 13 years since we originally posted the Pixar Theory, a video that would change our lives, this channel, and the entire internet forever. Okay, maybe not like the whole internet, but like certainly parts of it, right? We can get some credit, right? But since then, anytime a new Pixar movie has come out, we have revised and rewritten the theory to explain how each new edition plays its role in the greater Pixar universe. But we get it, there's 29 Pixar movies now, and maybe you missed a video or a movie here and there, and even if you didn't, 29 is a lot to keep track of, but fear not, because today we are simplifying it all down to one single video and posting an updated Pixar theory to include every movie from Toy Story,
You're my favorite deputy,
through Elio, a movie somehow also about the unlikely friendship of an Earthling and a space traveler. Oh, look at those guys. I can't believe they somehow solved our biggest how do cars come to life problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it. This
Pixar Theory, the Pixar Theory. We're finally going to see clearly the Pixar Theory.
By now, I feel quite certain you have at least heard of the Pixar Theory, or at least, sat down with someone who tried to explain how to watch all the Pixar movies in chronological order. And I'm here to tell you, you can thank us for that conversation, by the way. You're welcome. At the very least, though, I'm sure you're aware that Pixar is the king of Easter eggs. They are constantly leaving lots of little nods and references to their other works in all of their new works. And the Pixar theory is the idea that all these little nods are more than just little, winks at the audience, that they are proof that each and every Pixar movie is connected and therefore takes place in the same universe. One giant story, one huge timeline. And actually, I said you can thank us, but you can also thank another man, Jon Negroni, who originally introduced the world to the Pixar theory and posted about it on his blog, and has even since written a book about it. And naturally, since then, the internet has gone crazy with it and produced countless interpretations, timelines, and variations, but perhaps nobody has studied and expanded upon it as much as we have here at SuperCarlinBrothers. And this is the version we have arrived at after more than a decade of studying Pixar's films, tracking their themes, world building, and long-running narrative patterns. And just to keep things clear so you know what we're talking about as we move forward, this theory focuses only on the feature films. We're not going to be counting the shorts, the sparks, or the shows, just the movies. But with that out of the way, let's begin. But where to begin? Because the movies certainly don't come out in chronological order, at all. But there also isn't an obvious first movie. I mean, if we want to go as far back in time as possible, we'd be at the Good Dinosaur, right? Yeah, I can see how you'd think that, but what about, Elemental? Is that, the source of all light, or would that be Soul, or is Soul kind of happening all of the time and also none of the time? Time works weirdly in Soul.
The count's off.
You know what? Let's just keep it simple. We're going to start with the Good Dinosaur, and specifically this moment right here when the asteroid misses the Earth, because this is a pretty big whiff on the part of the asteroid. It is a whiff that actually acts as the catalyst for everything in this universe. It's why the Pixar universe is so similar to our own, but then also slightly different in increasingly wacky ways. I mean, just wait till we get to the sea monsters. The first significant change is that without the asteroid, unaliving the dinosaurs, they developed into a much more advanced society. Like, for example, we see that Arlo and his family have developed intelligence, architecture, agricultural practices, and actually farm the land. But, as they say in Brave, you cannot escape your fate. And so, even though the asteroid bought the dinos, an extra couple million years, they are still doomed to extinction by weather, which we see in the movie is already causing pretty big problems. For example, the pterodactyls used to be able to hunt for food, but now they must
Following the storm!
follow the storm in order to scavenge food. The T-Rexes herd animals for a steady food supply, a very limited resource that leaves their herd under constant threat from raptors. Heck, even Arlo's family's farming suggests that the land is just not naturally providing enough food for them to get by. But on the other hand, we also get an early glimpse of human life on the planet through Spot, who shows that even early humans were developing a very keen sense of resourcefulness. And what this establishes for the Pixar universe is something that we continuously see throughout the timeline as a whole. Animals that are not domesticated, like, rats or insects or essentially anything underwater, will all almost certainly develop some level of intelligence.
T. Sherman 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney. Why do I have to tell you over and over again? I'll tell you again, I don't get tired of it.
In fact, you can even see the domestication pattern is already at play within the Good Dinosaur with the, unintelligent chickens.
He said Footless Fran was the worst.
He's only got 1 foot.
But you know what? There are other ways animals might gain intelligence, because you might also be a human who was turned into a giant bear. Yes, that's right. Next up, we turn to the Pixar movie about mother-daughter strife where the main character has red hair and someone gets turned into a giant bear, turning red. Ha! You thought I was going to say brave, didn't you? 2 nickels, though. Am I right? Like, what are the odds that there are 2 Pixar movies with that plot? Well, actually, not that odd once you accept that the entire universe is connected. And quite frankly, I'm almost surprised it took this long to get another bear plot, because not only are the plots similar, but so is all of the magic related to turning someone into a bear, which is a real sentence that I just said. But check this out. Both situations involve a character from the past searching for power. In Turning Red, that's Sun Yi to protect her family, and in Brave, it's Mordu to kill his family. Gotta be honest, I think they could have seen it coming. One of them really stood out from the rest, just like context clues. Either way, very different motives, and yet both are granted this power in the exact same form. Giant bear. Mordu gets it from the witch in Brave.
Easy on the eyes. Tight pants.
Keep an eye on her, by the way. She's going to be fairly important to this whole thing,
Oh, you see that old woman over there? You might want to remember her. She's kind of important.
While Sun Yi is apparently granted it from the gods, or is she? More on that later. But hey, remember earlier, like 2 seconds ago, when I said to keep an eye on the witch? Well, I hope you did, because now we need to talk about her workshop, which is incredibly important to the overall Pixar theory. For one, it introduces us to magic, which is our first glimmer of things not acting the way they're supposed to. Like, her crow can talk to humans, her door doesn't work the way I've ever known doors to work, and the witch herself seems adept at wielding magic. Although, interestingly, the magic also has a little mind of its own. Like, when Merida offers her a necklace, all the knives turn on the witch, urging her to accept. Or, I don't know, maybe she just isn't, commanding the knives with enough heart's fire, eh?
From your heart's fire!
Aloft Elevon!
Don't hold back!
Aloft Elevon!
Heart's fire!
Saying heart's fire!
Don't you worry, we'll get to the magic in Onward in a little bit, but for now, let's stick with the witch and another important bit of sorcery she is capable of, which is changing someone's fate. Here's how Merida describes fate.
Some say our destiny is tied to the land, as much a part of us as we are of it. Others say fate is woven together like a cloth, so that one's destiny intertwines with many others. It's the one thing we search for or fight to change. Some never find it, but there are some who are led.
Fate is woven together like a cloth, so that one's destiny intertwines with many others. Kind of like, I don't know, maybe 29 different stories intertwining with each other to make one bigger story. Also, spoilers, this is going to pretty directly tie to the witch herself, but more on her in a bit. For now, let's get back to the bear magic in Brave and Turning Red, because they're just too similar to not be connected. I mean, there are some differences, black bear versus red panda, Malin's ability to transform back and forth while Meritor's mom is just stuck as a bear, but the similarities are crazy. For example, both bears have a certain darkness to them. Like Mordu is obviously in, full dark mode almost all of the time, even though when he eventually dies, the man on the inside is much more at peace, suggesting that somewhere along the way, the bear or primal darkness, overtook the man. And then Meritor's mom also shows moments of advancing towards like a more primal state throughout Brave. And we see Mei Lin even lose her cool on Tyler when he calls her a freak. Not to mention Ming as the giant Godzilla kaiju panda at the end there. But even how you undo the bear spell is crazy similar. Like, both involve a celestial-based time limit. For Merida, it's before the second sun rises, and for Mei Lin, it's before the end of the red moon. Then you have to stand inside of a physical circle and sing with your heart.
From your heart's fire!
Right? Sorry. Heart's fire to separate the soul from the body. And actually, speaking of soul, do we see this a third time too? Like a soul entering or exiting a body after a circle is drawn on the ground while people play music?
I put this man's soul in a cat!
Fate is like a great tapestry, you see. Okay, yes, to be fair, nobody's singing in Brave, but they are in a giant stone circle surrounded by people wishing with all of their heart's fire that Mrs. Brave will come back. That's her name, right? Queen Eleanor! And I mean, just compare the separated soul from the bear in each movie. Just this translucent ghost of a person who lived.
Coincidence? I think not!
Thank you, Barney.
Don't Bernie me!
Okay, so we've connected a few dots. Magic, souls, bears, humans, and animals capable of intelligence. What's next? Well, you guessed it, ChatGPT. No, not really, but sort of. The machines! And so begins the Great War. Animals in arms against the humans. Machines raining fire from the sky. And I'm just kidding. It's mostly a peaceful power struggle between the three groups where, the group in control often just rises at the cost of the others. Although, to be fair, it actually does start with a little, hand-on-hand combat back in the 50s with The Incredibles, which introduces the machines.
It's bigger! It's badder! Ladies and gentlemen, it's too much for Mr. Incredible!
Like it or not, Syndrome, aka Buddy, plays a pretty sizable role in this narrative. See, as a kid, young Budford looked up to the supers who fought back against a world of crime and danger, and Buddy, who is not a super, wanted desperately to be involved with his favorite superhero, the greatest of them all, Mr. Incredible.
You're not affiliated with me!
Bob, of course, turns him away, and Buddy then dedicates his life to inventing and selling powerful technology.
How do you think I got rich?
Little did Bob know that his failure to entertain Buddy's fandom would change the world forever. Whoa, did you guys see that? Because distraught, Buddy goes home and casually invents deadly AI in the form of the Omnidroids.
It got smart enough to wonder why it had to take orders.
We lost control.
Which he then uses to kill off all of the supers so he can pretend to be one.
Oh, I'm real. Real enough to defeat you!
What a waste. Didn't he even realize he could just use it to draw like pictures of people with weird hands? Unfortunately for him, the machines he invents end up being so smart they are able to defeat him as well. And even though the Incredibles step in to save the day, Pandora's box has been opened and the AI has been introduced to the world. Not to worry though, because the AI won't continue with the whole, Omnidroid path of destruction. Instead, it incorporates. That's right, it takes the much deadlier path of capitalism. You guys done with your Christmas shopping? Because I'll tell you what, we've got a lot of really great stuff. Sale! That was weird. Yeah, the AI marks the beginning of the end for the humans and even magic on other planets, but that's going to take a while. In the meantime, though, the animals are actually going to begin to reemerge as a bit of a power, but never quite take the driver's seat. Except for, that one time when Dory literally drives a truck off of a cliff into the water. Which, like, I know it's a movie about talking fish, but for some reason, that is the moment I have a hard time suspending my disbelief.
Oops, stop right there. Don't cross over that safety line.
Exactly. We're not quite there yet, Mike. So while Dory crashes that truck, let's quickly visit the other side of the world where another movie is happening right around the same time. Luca. Now, if you recall, at the end of Luca, Luca and Alberto are revealed to be sea monsters, a revelation that the townsfolk of Porto Rosso accept and embrace at almost lightning speed. Which is like, fine, good for them for being so open-minded, but I do feel like it happens a little fast for people with a statue of someone killing a monster in the middle of town to suddenly be like, nah, we're good. These two sea monsters are instead the winners of the Great Pastathlon. Woohoo! Which, can I just say, I think we're not giving Julia enough grace here. Like, having now done a triathlon myself, if they made me eat a giant bowl of pasta post-swim, pre-bike, I might have died. But what I'm really getting at here is that maybe the real reason the town is so quick to be forgiving of the sea monsters is that they're way more aware of the existence of supernatural things like superpowers in the world, which, we know everyone is because of the supers in Incredibles 2 being from all over the world. But supers aside, let's talk about the water in Luca, because it actually lines up super well with the Pixar theory, because the water in Luca is clean. Minus all the polluting Alberto himself is doing at the beginning of the movie, but other than that, crystal clear, which is in harsh contrast to Pixar movies which take place closer to the present day, where the water is very polluted whenever it's next to humans, a sure sign of things to come. But trash and sea monsters are also not the only thing we see under the water in Luca. We also see fish, and not just any fish that are decidedly incapable of driving a truck off the edge of a cliff. Dory, how you doing over there?
To rescue.
All right, cool. We'll check back later. Point is, these fish are nothing like the rest of the sea life we've seen in the Pixar universe. Like, what gives? But we actually already covered it. And as is so often the case in Pixar, the explanation lines up perfectly. These fish in Luca are domesticated, just like the dumb chickens in The Good Dinosaur. Which, speaking of, though, maybe don't let Arlo see these fish because they have even less feet than Footless Fran, which I assume would be quite jarring to him. I guess, to be honest, I can't be totally certain, but most things are pretty jarring to him. Anyway, at this point, while we're talking about The Incredibles and Luca, you might be saying, well, this is cool and all, but do you have an explanation for why the supers have powers, or maybe where the sea monsters came from in the first place, or heck, why this domestication of fish is happening in Italy, but not over in the Great Barrier Reef or something?
Dad, you're not gonna freak out like you did at the petting zoo, are you?
All great questions that I promise we will get to, but now we actually need to address our next section of movies on the timeline, which are going to include the Toy Stories, the Inside Outs, Finding Nemo / Dory, Ratatouille, and Up. Turning Red and Elio actually happen around this time too, but we already talked about Turning Red, and Elio is actually more important for the Cars section, so we'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, Finding Nemo shows us just how much the fish, similar to the dinosaurs, have advanced in the absence of human interference. They have a school system, traffic lights, a real estate market.
A lot of other clownfish had their eyes on this place.
You better believe they did.
Not to mention that we see a lone fish successfully circumnavigate the ocean and locate his son, and then another group of fish successfully overpower a human, and another group of fish sinks this boat, and then another group of fish crash a truck off of a bridge. Dory? Also, not for nothing, but check out this kid and his comic book about the supers of the past. Obviously, he didn't see the way better Buzz Lightyear toy he could have been playing with on the ground. Tapestry. But not all of the animals are out to fend off the humans. In Ratatouille, we see Remy the rat work with them and literally become the best chef in the world, which is pretty significant as until then, cooking is an exclusively human activity. Although I suppose I should note that while Remy is obviously an exceptional rat, he's also the exception to the rule because his family literally sees humans as the enemy, which eventually will come to be pretty true. But the information that Remy the rat is able to cook is mostly kept secret from the public and only known to 4 humans by the end of the movie, which are Linguini, Colette, Anton, and Chef Skinner, who does not like Remy and who promptly blabs to the press about the rats in the kitchen. I guess the health inspector knows too, right? Either way, it obviously grosses most people out, and they just decide to never eat at Gusteau's again, and they also shut it down, so. But if you are a very clever person, you may notice that the rats coincided exactly with renowned critic Anton Ego's stunningly good review of Gusteau's and put 2 and 2 together, which I agree is a stretch, and yet we actually do see animals serving food to humans in another Pixar movie.
Epsilon is the finest chef I've ever had.
Charles Muntz, the man literally waging war on animals, or like an animal to be more specific. A prehistoric animal, I might add, that is, as you'd expect, per the Pixar theory, extremely intelligent and capable of evading capture for the better part of 70 years. Bear in mind, Muntz is a guy who has captured a lot of other impressive specimens and was smart enough to recognize the potential of his dogs and invent collars to let them talk and then train them to fly planes. Man, Up is a weird movie sometimes. If it even happened at all, full video here. But Kevin's intelligence is not weird. It lines up perfectly with the fish and the rats that have gone ignored by humans and developed intelligence naturally, whilst, the busters of the world have not. Granted, Muntz is such a good dog trainer, he has literally bridged this gap himself, coaxing the intelligence out of his own domesticated dogs. But Up is important in other ways too, as it introduces some other big players into the Pixar theory, namely BNL, the corporate face of the machines that has been quietly at work in the background since The Incredibles. BNL, or By and Large, is the soulless and faceless company that is trying to buy Carl's house at the beginning of Up and eventually forces him out.
Yes, you! Take a bath, hippie!
Now, to be fair, I don't see anything about this gentle lad that screams hippie, but you do you, Carl. You do you. But it's not just Carl's hometown that's being impacted. BNL shows up a bunch in Pixar movies. I mean, most notably in WALL-E, which we're getting to, but also here in Toy Story 3, where you can see they produce the batteries powering Buzz. And actually, there are a bunch of little Easter eggs connecting Toy Story and Up. You can see Lotso and the Pixar ball in this room right here. The grape soda badge that Carl wears as the Ellie badge is also in a commercial in Sid's dad's room. And then, of course, there's the infamous postcard on Andy's bulletin board from the mysterious Emma Jean, who I do not have time to talk about right now, but who I spent the better part of my mid-20s investigating, taking the question all the way to Pixar Chief Creative Officer Pete Docter himself. Full and very old video by clicking the card, but maybe we should revisit that one. But hey, while we're talking about Toy Story and batteries, let's pause because it is a fantastic segue into one of the bigger concepts of the Pixar theory, which is the ultimate source of power for everything: human memory. It's what makes the toys come to life. It's why toys fear being forgotten. It's what's keeping WALL-E alive. It's why it's so important to put that picture on your ofrenda in Coco, which we're going to get pretty deep into in a few minutes. But for now, just know that human memory keeps stuff alive. When humans remember things, there's life. And when they don't, there isn't. At least when it comes to inorganic things like toys or spirits. Is that what you call the skeletons in Coco? I mean, I wouldn't call them organic, right? They're dead. I mean, I guess they're naturally occurring, but it's more of a metaphysical existence. You know what I mean? I think they're meta-organic beings. we're all on the same page.
Hola.
On the flip side, when it comes to the animals, human involvement is less than ideal. We get a good look at the impact of humans on animals in Finding Dory when they all arrive in what can only be described as an underwater junkyard. Like, it is heavily polluted and there's very little life around, except for some very resourceful crabs and a giant bioluminescent squid. Really, the trash is the important thing, as it marks the beginning of the end for the animals, as for the most part, trash is bad for animals, except for maybe like, rats or cockroaches or bugs or something. Which, let me just say, people often wonder where a bug's life fits into all this, and I mean, not nowhere. Like, this tree on their island is the same one from Up, and you can see Flick and Heimlich here in Toy Story 2, and this trailer is also the trailer that Randall gets sent back into in the human world.
Mama, another gator got in the house.
Another gator? Give me that shovel.
So, like, yes, A Bug's Life happened probably around 1998 when, like, Toy Story 2 is happening, and, some bugs fought some grasshoppers. Cool. Which, on that note, though, I think it is wild that one of the main characters in that movie is called Hopper, and he's a super intelligent bug. And now Pixar's next movie is literally called Hoppers, about putting human brains in animals. Can we just go ahead and confirm the Pixar theory yet? Like, we know you're watching, Pete, and can I just say we're honored? And yes, we'd love to voice a character someday. But anyway, let's go ahead and fast forward from the start of the pollution in Finding Dory to where things get way out of control, which means we're going to zoom ahead about 100 years to 2105 to WALL-E, where the humans leave the Earth having polluted it beyond the point of no return. Or so they think. Here's where things start to get very fun because Elio has officially entered the chat.
Hi.
In Elio, we see the young Elio become the first human to make contact with aliens after years of trying to accomplish exactly that. See, as a young boy, Elio's parents died, which caused him to believe that Earth had failed him. So he begins to look to the stars for answers and believes aliens are likely out there because of an exhibit he sees at his planetarium about the Voyager spacecraft and its golden record, which, by the way, is a very real thing. Like, the actual Voyager is actually out there playing the golden record, trying to make contact with aliens. But I think that's worth noting because it's not the only confirmed actual spacecraft we see in Pixar. Like, remember in Toy Story 2 when Stinky Pete says,
2 words, Sputnik.
Well, what's cool is that you can actually see Sputnik in WALL-E right here, which forms some very excellent connective tissue between these three movies. If you were to ask me, I would describe it like a tapestry, Connecting them further is that the only reason we see Sputnik is because it's part of all the space debris surrounding Earth that Eve's ship has to blast through on its way back to the Axiom. But remember how in Dory we could see the early signs of pollution in the water? Well, in Elio, after his aunt Olga adopts him, her career path gets, shunted sideways, where she is no longer going to get to be an astronaut, but is stuck doing a seemingly menial task, which is directing spacecraft away from floating space debris. Same thing happening at the same time.
Coincidence? I think not.
Granted, the pollution is not so bad yet in Elio that a bunch of random ham radio enthusiasts can't help, dodge it all just completely on the fly. Except, not all of those ham radio helpers are completely random. Because as Elio and Olga move around Earth's orbit, people chime in from all over the world, and one of them identifies herself as none other than Giulia from Italy.
This is Giulia from Italy.
Like, are you kidding me? Giulia, the little girl from Luca, who was all into space? Like, yes, that Giulia. Granted, by the time we get to Elio, she'd be around like 70 years old, but I have no issue believing that 70-year-old Giulia is a ham radio nerd.
And is there anything beyond the solar system?
Only a galaxy full of solar systems.
Mozzarella. I have to say, it is pretty cool when they have, actual characters from the other movies present in the movies, because you really don't see that very often. But I think that is what makes them seem all so connected. Like look here, like not for nothing, but it's Riley and Finding Dory. Whoa! Anyway, obviously Elio does make contact with the aliens, and his goal in the movie is to get the Communiverse to accept Earth as its newest member, which, after befriending the Hyalurgian Glorden, he is eventually able to accomplish. But here's the tricky part, because Earth having friendly contact with the Communiverse suddenly makes it seem like the whole WALL-E issue could have been avoided, doesn't it? Like, why doesn't Elio reach out for help as the ambassador for Earth? Sorry. Earth. Well, here's the twist. He does. Have you ever noticed how the technology left on Earth and the technology aboard the Axiom seem to be like light years apart? Pun intended. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, why leave behind the tread-bearing, highly mechanical trash robots to do the cleaning when you also have access to Eve-level technology? Like, wouldn't hyper-intelligent robots that can break the sound barrier be a safer bet to save humanity? Like, I don't think they invented them on the Axiom. I mean, granted, I don't think they, by which I mean B&L, are actually trying to save Earth at all, but I do think Glorden and the Communiverse did step in with solutions to actually try and help, mainly with technology, which would explain how the Axiom has hyperdrive just like Elio's ship and accounts for why all the robots seem to resemble the aliens. Like look at this guy. Very Eve-coded, and not for nothing, but Grygon's eyes are exactly like how Eve's eyes work. It's just a very crude digital display for what is otherwise remarkable technology, mostly meant to help demonstrate emotion, even though it's clear Grygon and Glorden can see, or at least perceive, without having any eyes. Like, even when you see from Eve's point of view, it's obvious the eyes are just decorative. Like, she sees through the whole faceplate. Also, she 100% has a Hyalurgian blaster and a carapace-shaped body. Just saying! But if they offered this tech to help them escape Earth while the cleanup is happening, why didn't they also help them clean the Earth? And actually, I think they did. Like, remember in Elio when they needed a stand-in for him on Earth while Elio was off doing, important things in space?
Hi! We should probably talk.
Well, it's the same plan, isn't it? Send humans off into space, so why not also leave behind stand-ins that can help with the cleanup, who won't be affected by the pollution and who just melt away when the humans come back? Which actually, that's a great spot to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Tradition. That's a little of what we're doing here, right? Like going back to something from the past, adding a little flavor of the present, and enjoyment comes from both contributions, or, at least I hope it does. But as we close out another year, another Pixar theory, it feels like a great time to suggest another tradition that, when woven into the fabric of your everyday life, can similarly bring joy and also review aspects of your childhood. Get it? Because we watched all these movies as kids, but in therapy, you also get to talk about you get it. Y'all, therapy is something we all believe strongly in here at SuperCarlinBrothers. We have no questions asked policy for our team to take therapy appointments as needed, and Ben and I are both active participants. So whether you're looking to set new boundaries, explore aspects of your past, or simply better understand your own self, therapy can help. And with over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is one of the world's largest online therapy platforms, having served over 5 million people globally, and it works. With an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on over 1.7 million client reviews. This December, start a new tradition by taking care of you, and our viewers get 10% off at betterhelp.com/super. That's betterhelp.com/super. Link is in the description down below. Yeah, they sent the cloning clay to be a more efficient cleanup method. Clone Elio even says that after he decomposes, you can scatter him around as an excellent plant fertilizer.
Well, if you don't need me anymore, I will begin my decomposition process. Feel free to spread me over a plant as nutritious fertilizer.
Which is the exact thing they need on Earth. I mean, I don't know what happened to you if you ate plants grown from cloning clay, but, I guess it's okay. It's honestly an extremely elegant solution that might have worked, but for some reason doesn't get used, or at least not the way they intended. My guess is that maybe the humans didn't understand it, maybe it got there too late, or my personal headcanon is that BNL only accepted the help that furthered their own goals, aka abandon humanity and Earth and never to return, and didn't actually care about the cleanup because they assumed it was impossible.
Let's get the heck out of here.
But alas, earwax, that doesn't mean the cloning clay didn't arrive, because it absolutely did. And the way it works is that it uses DNA to make replicas. And even though humans aren't there, their DNA is all over their cars. Wow. Yes, at long last, we have an explanation for the cars. The clay interacts with the human DNA on the cars.
He did what in his cup?
Assumes that is the shape of the creature and clones the human in the form of their car, thus explaining their exact personalities, but also why they have biological features, like tongues. But like, you can't see inside their windows because there's nothing to see. It's just clay. Where do car babies come from? They don't. We don't have to worry about it anymore.
Get it in!
A relief I know to a lot of people. Now, there are still some peculiarities here. Like, obviously, they still observe the world through a carified lens, which is why all the landmarks are familiar, but, you know, different. But one of the fun things is that if you're doing the math, it also means that Lightning McQueen wasn't just a car. At some point, he was a human, which is further supported by this band-aid this truck driver is wearing. Clearly a fan of Lightning the human. It's the same truck from earlier, by the way. But if you're wondering which human it was, we actually think it was the actor who played Buzz in the in-universe Lightyear movie. And like, I don't have time to explain all of that right here, but you can see my full thoughts there. But Lightning isn't the only human we can account for. We can also use knowledge of the cars to link back to Luca and Alberto's missing father. We don't learn very much about Alberto's father other than that he abandoned Alberto after living with him for quite some time above the water in a tower near town. And whilst it's never confirmed, I do feel pretty safe guessing that his father's name was, of course, Bruno, as in...
Silencio, Bruno!
Silencio, Bruno!
Silencio, Bruno!
Silencio, Bruno!
Can you still hear him?
Nope!
Which, if you don't recall, is, you know, Alberto's whole don't listen to the voice inside your head, you only live once, let's drive this rickety Vespa off a cliff into the ocean and just generally ignore gravity war cry.
Silencio, Bruno!
And it makes sense, like his dad probably cared about him at least enough to tell him to, you know, not jump out of windows and stuff. But having been abandoned, Alberto rebels by refusing to listen to any warning echo from his father and instead shouts,
Silencio, Bruno!
Which is relevant because in Cars 2, there's actually a car named Bruno Motoro, who is the French crew chief of Raoul Sarul, an exceedingly minor character, except that he is almost certainly the cloning clay version of Alberto's father. Because for having almost no screen time, we know a surprising amount about Bruno Motoro. Like, he plays the accordion, likes romantic drives along the Seine, and his favorite movie is The Engine of Dr. Motoro. Which, in case you're wondering, The Engine of Dr. Motoro is a reference to the real-life movie The Isle of Dr. Moreau, which is a movie about a man creating human-animal hybrids. You know, just like the, sea monsters. And while the Seine is a river in France, it does have another meaning, which is fishing net. And not just any kind of fishing net, but specifically the kind Alberto almost gets caught in at the start of the movie. So, the idea is that the human Bruno caught Alberto's mother, who, of course, just looked human above the surface. And then they fell in love, had Alberto, and then she died. Possibly at the hands of the townsfolk, who again have a statue of people hunting sea monsters in their town square, which leaves Bruno to raise his son alone, which he has to do above water, away from town, because, you know, he is not a sea monster, hence why Alberto doesn't live underwater. With my point being that the similarities between Bruno Motoro's interests and the likely story of Bruno's father all but prove that this is how the cars come to life. Got it? Good. Me too. Bet when you saw Elio, you didn't think it was gonna explain why cars exist and Bruno's missing father, did ya? But we're not done with Cars and Luca yet either, because they share another important Pixar theory link in the form of, yeah, you guessed it, crabs. Did you know that crabs are the only non-carified animal to exist in the Cars universe? We hear about it from Cruz in Cars 3 right here.
I didn't want to hit a crab.
But it's surprising there are any animals left, right? Like, don't they all die after the pollution? Well, it would be surprising, but if we go back to that scene in Finding Dory in the junkyard, what was the only animal surviving in the trash? Crabs. And guess what else the sea monsters have domesticated? Crabs! Also, we know that about as far forward as Wall-E, there is at least one other critter that has managed to survive in the form of Hal, Wall-E's pet cockroach, which may seem irrelevant, but actually crustaceans such as crabs are very closely related to none other than cockroaches. Yeah. These, like the common Twinkie, are amongst the few candidates capable of surviving Earth's current harsher conditions. Tapestry! But anyway, let's stop talking about sea monster, cloning clay, car physics, and get back to the present, or, well, the future, I guess, you know, when everyone leaves on the Axiom. Or, well, actually, not everyone leaves on the Axiom. That's just the ship that we, the audience, follow. But as you can see, there are a lot of starships that take people off Earth. Like, have you ever wondered what happened to the rest of them? Are they still out there, unaware Earth has been saved? Did everyone on board die? Were they also sending out Eve drones to collect samples? We may never know, but I think we can safely tell you what happened to one of them, which is that they very unsafely crash landed on a whole different magical planet. Horsefire! Okay, so when I first watched Onward, something that always seemed out of place to me was the fact that this Fantasyland type world adopted almost all of the exact same technology as Earth. But clearly they weren't on Earth because, you know, there's multiple moons. But how could this be? Like, are smartphones and cars just inevitable? No. As ever, the Pixar theory provides.
The storm provides!
The reason the technology in Onward is so similar to Earth's is because the technology is from Earth. It's all just being sourced from the one giant star cruiser loaded with the peak of human technology that crashed there so long ago. Of course, by human, I also mean Communiverse. Because if a giant spacecraft crashed into the middle of your magical utopia, you'd probably have explored the interior of the ship as much as you could to learn where it had come from. And guess what? Telling people about where it came from is a known function of the Axiom, and its database is very capable of telling you all about Earth.
Earth? Define Earth.
Plus, it is equipped with a powerful AI that can tell them how to do and build most things, which they do quickly. And honestly though, if it came from the Communiverse, it can probably tell them way more than that. But if the, Onwardians are anything like Earthlings and
working hard or hardly working?
Clearly they are, then they didn't use it that way.
Who would win in a fight? One gorilla with a baseball bat or 10 chimps?
But if only a select few people on the planet were capable of performing magic, you can see why technology that made life easier for every single elf, gnome, troll, and centaur may quickly have been adopted. Heck, this is literally Syndrome's plan. Like, oh, only some of us are special? Well, guess what? Now we all are because I invented it for everyone.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
But that is why the cars, the planes, the highways, the snacks, the infrastructure of the modern world in Onward is almost identical to Earth. You know what? I bet in their art museums, they even have similar, what are they called? Tapestries. But I mean, they even have the exact same brand of triple dent gum.
Triple dent gum.
No! But I hear you, you're like, hey, that's a cool theory, but where's the proof? If a B&L cruiser crashed on this planet, shouldn't we see like at least a B&L logo or something somewhere? Well, no, because that would have been hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But I'll do you one better. I'll show you the ship itself. So, in Onward, the brothers are questing towards a huge mountain in the distance called Raven's Point. It turns out this isn't their destination, but it is ours because the mountain of Raven's Point isn't a mountain at all. The whole movie, I kept thinking it looked so familiar in some way, and that is when I looked up the blueprints for the Axiom, and guess what? It is a literal perfect fit for a nosedive crash landing Axiom. And if you're concerned about the size of the ship being the size of a mountain, well, you can leave that concern right at the door because these ships are massive, and easily mountain-sized. And if you're like, well, then why doesn't it look like a starship? Well, it no longer resembles a spaceship because it's been hundreds of years since the crash, and now it's just covered in nature. But all that said, Ian and Barley's journey is one of actually abandoning technology and going back to the old ways of true magic, kind of like the people on Earth returning from the Axiom. It's like a, what's the word? But what is true magic? How does it work? Great question, and it feels like it is time to address it, which we can now finally do thanks to, you guessed it, Inside Out 2.
I'm anxiety. I'm one of Riley's new emotions, and we are just super jazzed to be here.
Well, you thought it was just a cute movie about puberty and anxiety and hockey and self-acceptance, did you? Well, you're wrong. It's about wizards and aliens and alien wizards and superpowers and stuff. But also, yes, mental health. You guys in therapy? Because I am. My kids actually right now are opening advent calendars for Christmas, and my son Nate recently opened a sum of anxiety and came sprinting into the kitchen to proudly announce, "I've got anxiety!" Me too, son. Me too. Anyway, the new mind mechanic we learn about in Inside Out 2 is the belief system and how this informs your sense of self. And the way it works is that memories which are currently floating at the center of your stream of consciousness form your beliefs. Things like, I'm a good friend, or I love my parents, I like helping others, and all of those come together to form your sense of self, which for Riley, at least at the beginning of the movie, is, I'm a good person.
I'm a good person.
But then by the end, she's able to embrace that she is more than just all of her positive thoughts. She is also her negative experiences and emotions too. She is all of that and more.
You're me and more.
Tapestry. But that got me wondering, are there other examples in Pixar of people's belief system on display doing something extraordinary? Like, beyond just giving a teenage girl the, confidence to play hockey. Yes! I know, also extraordinary, but you know what I mean. And the answer is yes, because immediately our minds went here, where Ian has to cast a trust bridge. And so it is. Ian's belief is so strong that the bridge genuinely exists as long as he continues to believe it. And I think that's what Barley means by speaking with your heart's fire.
Heart's fire!
Speaking with true conviction, with true belief that the magic will work. And so it does.
It worked! The can is huge! And the bed is huge! And you're... Oh no.
But I suppose it should also be noted that despite the belief system being the source of magic, it doesn't mean anyone can do it. I mean, case in point is Barley himself. He knows everything there is to know about magic and has no trouble believing in it, but can't actually do it. Like, in addition to believing in it, you must also be magical like Ian.
Aloft, Elevor!
But so then, are there other magical beings we've met in Pixar? I mean, obviously the witch, but we'll get to her. And the answer is again, yes. And this one might surprise you, but I think Miguel is another magical being. Like, I've always loved Coco, but I've always continued to wonder how he got to the land of the dead. And I mean, we can clearly see when it happens, like right here, but how is never explained. Except that now it is. It's because he believes, wrongly I might add, that Ernesto de la Cruz is his ancestor and that by taking this guitar, he'll get to play in the plaza. He even says it out loud.
I'm gonna play in the plaza, just like you did.
Then, upon strumming the guitar, things seem to go wrong as he's brought into the land of the dead, but they are not as wrong as you might think because guess what happens? He ends up playing in a plaza with his actual ancestor, who he just like randomly runs into. The first person he meets in the afterlife is an unknown ancestor of himself. Sure. Now, the curious thing here is that his initial belief is incorrect, but that doesn't matter because Miguel's belief is stronger than reality. And the same goes for the trust bridge. Ian's belief is stronger than reality. But so then what actually makes you magical, you might be wondering? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Sorry to leave you hanging again. There's a lot of those in this. But in the meantime, let's get back to our timeline on Earth, where the cars and some crabs are running shop. Because another issue you may be pointing out is that if the cars are on the Earth for the 700 years that the people are away on the Axiom, why does it look so brown at the start of WALL-E and so, normal during Cars? Like, if there is so much plant life in Cars, why did it take the Eve drones so long to capture a viable sample? Two very excellent points, both of which are quite easily explained. So, first of all, the humans might have needed to leave Earth long before Earth looked the way it did at the beginning of WALL-E. And second, the Eve droids may specifically be searching for life in the heavily polluted areas just to see if life had returned there. Maybe that's the test. But really, either way, it doesn't matter. Because here's the thing. The AI is determined not to return home. Even if the whole planet was 100% clean, it would maintain its directive to stop the captains from learning about it.
Follow my directive.
But then as for the planet eventually becoming so brown, well, that's probably because of the cars themselves. I mean, the entire population of the planet was nothing but automobiles for a few centuries before they all turned into fertilizer. It is, as we said though, like no humans, no energy. So even though the cars are clay, they act like cars and survive on fuel and stuff, but even by Cars 2, there's an energy crisis. But no problem, because eventually the humans do return and Earth is saved, right? Yes! Sort of. Things do look up for a while, but have you ever wondered what happened to the humans after they get back, like after the credits rolled? Well, wonder no more, because obviously they become monsters. But not like mean monsters, funny monsters. Now this was another tricky one, and for a long time our theory here was that even though the planet was livable, there were still leftover effects of the pollution, and the humans' exposure to some kind of like radiation prompted the transformation. But now we have a much better and satisfying explanation for this. Sea monsters. Man, I'll tell you what, Luca is like so important for the Pixar theory. See, while all the above ground humans left Earth, it doesn't mean the sea monsters did. The oceans, being much larger than the surface world, likely allowed them to spread out and find sanctuary and survive unhindered beneath the surface for 700 years. I mean, we know they don't have to live near land to survive and can take a lot of different forms thanks to, Luca's weird uncle.
Luca, I need you to punch his heart. That's right, the red thing. Punch it. Harder!
Punch me in the heart. But I bet you can see where this is going. The humans can now live on the surface again, which means so can the sea monsters. But what do they look like above the surface? People! And what do they look like above the surface? Pregnant! That's the wrong franchise, but it is going to be true in a second. No, they look like people. But if our story about Alberto's parents is correct, and let's face it, it's ironclad, then it means people and sea monsters can procreate. And since the sea monster population is likely much larger, it wouldn't take too long before the two groups produced an entirely new race of monsters. This was the weird part I mentioned earlier, which you probably didn't need me to tell you, because it's just weird. But not to worry, it's not all the birds and the bees of which we can't be certain are present. It's also the cloning clay of it all. Because if you'll recall, as the cars, who are made of cloning clay, break down, they become fertilizer. But not just your run-of-the-mill cow manure here, no, we're talking alien furt. Sounds like alien fart.
Nice.
What I'm trying to say is that the foliage on the planet, and therefore food, is also alien to planet Earth. But it all continues to tapestry, because guess what happens as soon as the humans are gone and have turned into the monsters? Energy crisis. That's right. No humans, no energy.
Mikey, there's a screen shortage. We're walking.
What am I saying, that monsters aren't people? No, they're not humans. Of course the monsters are people. Come on. But consider this. What is it we know for a fact that they are harvesting to run Monstropolis? Human energy. Or, more specifically, human emotions, or even much more specifically, memories. And at last we can talk about human memory is powering stuff. If you will recall, at the start of Monsters Incorporated, there is a scare shortage, which makes no sense. I mean, we know both Sully and Randall are close to breaking the all-time scare record, but are you telling me that with the two most successful scares of all time working right next to each other every day, you are close to a shortage? Like, how?
Kids these days, they just don't get scared like they used to.
Indeed, Waternoose, indeed. In the movie, the solution to this problem is discovering that laugh energy is more powerful than scream, but I submit to you, this makes no sense because of what I just said. Talent is at an all-time high. There hasn't been a scream shortage in the past. Why is scream at an all-time low? But it's because of how the scare floor works, which is time travel. So the idea behind how scaring works during the era of Monsters Incorporated is that when they travel through the doors, they're not just traveling through space, but also time. And we can easily see on the scare floor that there is a map of the entire world and a specific time zone that the monsters are traveling into in the corresponding human world. But here's a fun fact. When you enter those rooms, you can spot posters related to the opening of the Disneyland parks, which would be in the 1950s. Not to mention, this Jessie doll in Boo's room, which would have come out with Woody's Roundup, which was also in the 50s and notably super popular until...
2 words. Sputnik.
It's only 1 word, but no big. Either way, why don't kids scare like they used to? Well, there's actually an in-universe explanation for this very timeline. See, the supers, Bob, Helen, Frozone, the rest of them, are all at the top of their game.
I'm at the top of my game. I'm right up there with the big dogs.
During that interview is the early 1940s. Crime is clearly rampant, hence the need for the supers, and with lots of crime, you can only imagine which emotion is pulling overtime in the minds of kids the world over. Yeah, that's right, this little purple hero right here. Which would line up with the younger Waternoose as well, who could at that time farm as much fear as he wanted. But here's the catch. The monsters can only travel back a set distance of time. So as time passes in the monsters world, it also passes in the human world, meaning Waternoose is then constantly up against the emotions of the ever-changing times. So by the time Sully and Randall roll around is when Syndrome would have recently introduced AI to the world, and the machines are starting their slow rollout to pamper humans to extinction.
It's the new stunning, right? I know, honey. Man.
Meaning that fear is no longer the dominant emotion. Joy is, hence laughter energy.
And may I add, I love your dress, it's adorable. Oh, this old thing, thank you so much. I love the way it twirls.
And you can see it for yourself in Inside Out. Just look at Riley's long-term memory. Nearly all of her memory orbs are joy. There is literally just more to harvest from these kids because they have more happy memories. And I do mean memories, specifically not emotions. The emotions just color the memories. And for the longest time, the power of emotion always seemed like enough to satisfy our thirst for how this works. But then Elemental entered the scene, and yeah, now it's time to get molecular. You, like us, may have noticed that when you are watching Elemental, a movie that gets better and better every time you watch it, by the way, that certain elements or colors seem to be tied to the different emotional states of the characters. For example, water and sadness. Like when you meet Wade, you might think, wow, this guy's very emotional, but it turns out it's not just him, it is a very water thing. His whole family is constantly crying about everything. Good, bad, beautiful, sad. Half a butterfly. Water is very sadness coded, right down to the color blue.
Oh, remember the funny movie where the dog dies?
Then the next super obvious one is anger, because all throughout the movie, Ember is constantly losing her temper and literally exploding all over the place. And, you know, back in Inside Out, whenever anger is extra mad, he literally lights on fire. But it goes deeper than even that into our next emotion, fear, which in Inside Out is represented by the color purple.
She almost went full purple.
And early on in Elemental, some shop customers remark about how Ember almost went full purple in one of her outbursts, as she does this several times in the movie, and every time it looks like purple means extreme rage. However, after Ember tries to run away from Wade after like their big touching moment, he drops a huge truth bomb on her and says,
"This whole time I thought you were so strong, but turns out you're just afraid."
Ouch, that hurt. But also, if you're aware of this on your second or like 12th watch, you'll notice that anytime Ember appears to be so angry she's gone purple, she's actually just afraid. And so purple equals fear. Conversely though, moving on to the next emotion, when Ember is inside the bubble seeing the Vivisteria tree for the first time, and after Wade tells her he loves her, she glows yellow, which I'm sure you are aware is the color of joy.
And they're mostly happy, you'll notice, not to brag.
And to round things off, we have green and disgust. And to be fair, this one gets the least attention and doesn't really involve the main characters. Like, I mean, Ember does turn green at one point. That's mostly just because she's standing on some minerals though. Instead, I think disgust gets represented really well by a bunch of the earth elementals. Like you've got, you know, Claude, who keeps picking flowers from his armpits. And then there's the guy at City Hall who has to get, you know, root rot treatment or something. And then, of course, there are these two pruning each other. Well, I thought this was a kid's movie. My stars. But while I'm sure you find all these correlations fascinating, you might wonder how it explains the literal raw power of emotions and memories in Pixar. But don't worry, we're getting there. Because not only do we think the elements are the, like, you know, DNA of the emotions, if you will, but you can literally see the elements make memories, and not just like, you know, like having a good time, but like making the little orbs, both physically and metaphorically. And it happens 3 times. First, when Ember and Wade are on the beach, she literally makes a small glass orb. And this is the important part. It is because she is bonding with Wade. The second time is in their trip to the Vivisteria tree, which for them to do, they have to make an air bubble for Ember, and she floats inside of it, and Wade brings her to the tree to have the experience she missed out on as a kid, as well as make the new best memory of her life. Once again, bonding with Wade. Once again, orb. And then the final time happens moments after that trip to the tree when Ember and Wade finally touch. And it's possibly my favorite shot of the entire movie, but they're holding hands and the camera zooms out to show them beneath an arched bridge with the city right behind them. Which, like, not for nothing, but the city looks reminiscent of Riley's long-term memory, just saying. But the more important thing is that the bridge forms a perfect half circle around them, and the reflection in the water creates the final memory orb encircling them. It's honestly very poetic, really. Like, the first 2 orbs are physical, while their connections are non-physical, but this time, they are physically touching, while the orb is more metaphorical. And it's as Wade says, when they touched, their chemistry changed. They caused a reaction. In fact, that's the tagline for the movie. Opposites react. Water and fire come together in a way they have never done before and cause a new change to occur. And surprise, surprise, this is the exact thing that happens with the emotions. And when he says their chemistry changed, what he means is, what he means is that they love each other. But scientifically, what he means is they made a chemical reaction, aka a process in which one or more substances, the reactants, are converted to one or more different substances. substances, the products. Chemical reactions are an integral part of technology, of culture, and indeed of life itself. Life itself, which, for the purpose of our fun little Pixar universe, means that when they touch, they create literal, pure energy. The elements are therefore the source material for the energy and the DNA of the emotions, if you will. I mean, heck, when Wade and Ember get their love reading from Ember's mom, the smoke literally forms a double helix just like DNA. I mean, come on, and it gets even cuter because all of this ultimately suggests that at a literal base, elemental, molecular level, love is the source of energy that makes memories that power the world of Pixar. Oh. Now, I wonder what it would look like if you had like a surplus of an element in like one person, you know, like extra power, you know, like...
Aloft Elevor!
Just saying. But now that we know the source of the power, let's get back to Inside Out and Monsters, Inc. Because Inside Out also explains why children are better targets than adults for harvesting this energy. Because for the most part, all of their memories are single emotions. But when they get older, they have more complex and mixed emotions, which would be harder to harvest. Let me just say that as the father of 3 young children, can confirm. Can confirm! But now we need to talk about Bing Bong and his tapestry work with Coco, which will transition us very nicely to the whole point of the Pixar theory, the why of it all. Now, as I'm sure you recall, Bing Bong, your friend who likes to play, dies. And it's quite sad, unlike some other deaths on this channel. Oh, you didn't think we were gonna do it? But before he dies, Bing Bong represents a bit of an edge case in Riley's mind, where since she believed him to be real, he isn't preserved in an orb, but instead as an actual thing that walks around. Wow, it's almost like belief is more powerful than reality in this world. But Bing Bong spends most of the movie in this in-between state, as a memory that isn't called upon, but also one that is not forgotten. So he's allowed to continue existing until, of course, he falls victim to the memory dump.
Take her to the moon for me.
But oddly, or maybe not so oddly, this exact phenomenon is the driving force behind the entire plot of Coco, which is why it should come as no surprise that the City of the Dead also looks like an even grander version of the human mind. The difference, of course, here is that rather than, looking at like one little girl's memories, now we're looking at the collective memories of generations of people of Mexico. And yet, the rules are pretty much the same. Like once a year, if your family puts your picture on the ofrenda, you're allowed to cross over to the living world and receive gifts, which is kind of like summoning a memory orb up to headquarters. And as long as any memory of you exists anywhere, just one memory orb in one living person's head, it will be enough to keep you alive in the after life. You know what I mean? But if you are completely forgotten, then much like Bing Bong or Hector's friend Chicaron, you receive a final death. And that belief that being remembered matters is the true heart of the Pixar theory. To remember those who came before us, to let the past guide the future, and to know that as long as someone is remembered, they're never really gone. And once you're aware of this theme, you can see it everywhere in basically every single Pixar movie. And if you don't believe me, in Toy Story, the toy's greatest fear is being forgotten, because if they are, they die. I mean, just look at Wheezy. Nearly forgotten, nearly gone. In A Bug's Life, Hopper maintains control by making the ants forget the truth, that they never needed the grasshoppers at all. Marlin's journey isn't just about saving his son, but about remembering his wife and reclaiming the part of himself that grief buried. Finding Dory turns forgetting itself into the tragedy, showing you how devastating it is to lose your memories, your connections, and your sense of self. Bob fears that if the world forgets the glory days, then Mr. Incredible, who he believes he truly is, will disappear with them. In Ratatouille, Cousteau's legacy is being rewritten and dragged through the mud, and Remy's mission is to restore his memory and set that story straight. Carl carries Ellie's memory as literal baggage until he realizes that honoring her doesn't mean standing still, it means living the life that she wanted for him. Arlo is trapped by the memory of his father's death until he learns he doesn't need to live up to the past to be enough. In fact, he is his father and more. In Onward, Barley is haunted by the memory of never getting to say goodbye, while Ian is driven by the need to create any memory at all with the father he never knew. Joe believes the only way to matter is to be remembered as a great pianist and nearly loses everyone who already gives his life meaning, while 22 thinks life has no meaning only for a single day of memories to change their entire perspective. Alberto's bravado hides the memory of being abandoned by his father, leaving him terrified that if he's remembered at all, it'll only be as someone not worth staying for. May grapples with generational memory, deciding which expectations and traditions to carry forward and which to finally let go. Ember and Wade struggle under the weight of legacy, learning how to honor where you came from without letting it define who you must be. And in Elio, a lonely boy missing his parents finally believes he's been remembered, chosen even by the universe itself, only to discover that true belonging doesn't come from being important out there, but from being seen and loved right where you are. Oh, did I leave some out? Conversely, the cars stand apart because as machines, or clay posing as machines, the characters aren't driven, pun intended, by being remembered at all. Doc and Lightning openly scoff at legacy, while Otto in WALL-E actively works to erase humanity's memory of where it even came from. But then there's WALL-E himself, whose love for humans and whose active remembering of them quite literally brings life back to the world. I mean, how else do you explain the fact that the only living plant anywhere near him manages to grow inside of a refrigerator with no sunlight and no water? Like it's almost like he has a soul. Oh, you think that's who 22 lands into? Cool. I mean, they're on Earth for one day and all they do is collect junk. And like, what does WALL-E do every day? You know? I'm just saying. But if your answer to that question was that he weaves tapestry, I agree. But on that note, as soon as the captain starts remembering Earth and all of the passengers begin remembering Earth, guess what happens to Earth? Plants everywhere. But meanwhile, whilst they had forgotten about it, trash planet. And finally, this brings us to Brave, right where we started, where the greatest memory of them all lives in the witch's little hut. Because on the back of her door is an image that simply has no business existing in medieval Scotland, and yet there is a carving of none other than Sully. Why? Because this is not just some random witch. This old lady is actually Boo. Oh, sorry, did you need more proof? Well, for one, she's obsessed with bears, and Sully certainly resembles a bear, and might be how you remember him if you only ever saw him as a very little girl. Two, she has a carving of the Pizza Planet truck right here, right there. And like, how would she even know what that is if she isn't from the future, okay? And three, where did Sully come from when she was a girl? A magic door. And what does the witch have on her hut? A magic door. And what a weird memory to chase for your whole life, right? Like, you'd probably think you were going crazy, but part of you would always remember your adventure with the giant talking bear. Like, was it just a dream? It must have been, because giant talking bears don't exist, right?
People still talk about Pandapocalypse 2002.
Oh wait, that's right, they do! And can you imagine how this would affect an adult Boo to discover this kind of magic was real? We did the math, and Boo would be roughly 47 around the time Pandapocalypse happens, just the age to have a teenage child, probably of Asian descent, likely dressed in flowers, similar to her mom's childhood door, because you know how kids are. But do we know who anybody? Yes, that's right! May's friend Abby, which, Bad news, Boo doesn't like 4-Town? What?
Mine called it stripper music.
But good news, since her daughter was pretty involved in the whole Pandapocalypse thing, she probably has very good reason to ask anything she wants of May's family and get some, some good bear magic answers. And if she discovers time travel as well, which not for nothing is actually very neatly laid out for her in the popular in-universe film of the time, Lightyear, although I guess that would be like more of a technological solution like in Monsters Inc. rather than a magical one like she's gonna end up using. But if, nay, when she discovers it, then she can also be the one who went back and gave Sun Yi the ability to transform into a bear in the first place, thus ensuring an infinite loop where her future self would always learn about the magic. And Boo is great at this trick. In fact, it's her way of solving how to make sure that Sully never gets forgotten ever. She solves the second death problem. Because all you need is one memory orb, right? So what you do is go to the past and remember something from the future, thus creating a permanent loop. As long as she sets in motion the events of Brave, she ensures the future will always happen. She'll always go on to be a little girl again and meet Sully and travel back to make sure the memory stays alive. And believe it or not, this is also how he ended up with the sea monster. See, I told you we'd get back to it, though this time Boo is not directly responsible, but here's how it works. Banishment. The first sea monster was just a banished monster like the Loch Ness Monster or the Abominable.
Welcome to the Himalayas!
Now, you may notice though that those monsters are banished to places that are not the Italian Riviera, so like what gives? Well, the Himalayas is a pretty undesirable location because of all the snow, which makes sense because Abominable is being banished for breaking the laws, specifically mail fraud.
All right, newbies, quit goofing around.
But I don't think that any of the banished sea monsters were breaking any rules or laws at all. I think they all just shared the same condition that when they were above water, they looked like humans, which, as a reminder, is kind of like a huge no-no in the monster world.
2319!
So really, they're not being banished, they're just being relocated, which is why they get to go somewhere nice like the Italian Riviera. And I can already hear your comments. Is this a bit of a bootstrap paradox? Well, only if you don't see the big picture, which is that it always happened that way. Things aren't unfolding in a linear fashion. They are all part of one great big tapestry. And that is the Pixar Theory. Guys, thank you so much for watching and sticking with us for all of these years. If you want a fun blast from the past and to see how far we've come since the original Pixar Theory, you can check out the original posting right over here. I cannot wait for 2026 and to continue to add to this fun giant tapestry that is the Pixar Theory. But until next time, I will see you